Hello, and thanks for joining us today on the Higher Ground podcast. My name is Tom Castriota, and I got the idea for this podcast during a coaching session that I had with one of my mentees. It's a simple idea, really. I interview my friends to cover all sorts of topics about life at work and provide advice to help you reach your career potential. So whether you're preparing for an interview, seeking a promotion, or just curious about what's in the minds of hiring managers, executives, or other interview candidates, then this podcast is for you. Join us as we explore real career journeys, one story at a time. Oh, and from our lawyers, views expressed on the Higher Ground podcast are the personal opinions of myself and our guests and don't necessarily represent the views of their employers, past or present. And if you like the show, please like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Higher Ground podcast. I'm your host, Tom Castriota, and I have a special guest for you today. Soraya Depowski joins us. We worked together years back when I was a consultant at Capco, and Soraya was at Goldman Sachs. But not to try to preempt you in any way, I'd like to let's hear your story from you.
Thank you, Tom. I'm very excited to be on your podcast. I'm honored.
Thank you.
So yes, I am Soraya. I am currently the founder of Sharely, which is an impact-focused fintech, which I can talk more about, but the high-level vision, mission is to harness the power and the profitability of the capital markets to allow people to take some of that power, profitability, and privilege and share it with high-impact nonprofit organizations that are solving the world's challenges, and do so in a very easy, data-driven, automated way.
So many things I want to unpack in there. So when you say high impact, like I've my limited understanding of the not-for-profit space. When you see like wealthy individuals, I always forget her first name, but ex Bezos, right? Her strategy is dump a bunch of money, go figure out what you want, right? And then there's other strategies like Gates, which is micromanage, understand every detail. So like that's a wide spectrum, obviously.
Yeah.
How do you measure it? I'd love to understand like how do you measure impact and how do you why don't I be quiet and listen to you?
Very good question. And you'll get a million different answers if you ask a million different people. But what I am drawn to is being able to come to some sort of metric, you're never going to remove all doubt or all questions, but just to have something to kind of base your understanding on in terms of when you are donating to an organization, kind of how is your dollar being used?
Sure.
And there's this camp or philosophical movement, I don't know what to describe it as, it's called Effective Altruism. And they're at this very data-driven scientific outcomes end of the spectrum, and they're very focused on, for every dollar donated, what is the real world outcome or impact of that dollar. So they go down to randomized control trial levels. And assessing various interventions. And it's done both across the social impact space and environmental to the degree possible. And so I started, when I left Goldman, I joined an organization that's in this effective altruism space. You can also call it effective giving. It's kind of less rigid. But it's the organization I joined is called The Life You Can Save. And so I got to learn a lot about this type of rigorous impact evaluation and impact measurement. And, they have an overall calculation that they use to kind of evaluate the organization and its financials and its operating model and how the programs are run, and kind
Hmm.
of get down from high level into the details of, again, representatively each dollar that comes in, when compared with the outcomes that the organization is able to achieve, how do they tie back, and be able to report out those types of metrics. So at the end of it, you have what's either called an cost per outcome. So it could
Okay.
be, for example, one of the organizations they promote, for 10 cents, 10 US cents, you can provide iodine to a child in Africa,
Oh, wow.
or for them for a period of time, I believe it's a year, so that they can, there are many impacts of having, sub subpar iodine levels,
Yes.
and it can lead to brain damage and even death. So they're
Wow.
measuring outcomes in terms of the health and also the future economic prospects of the individuals, because they're able to be healthy enough to go to
Sure.
school and then get jobs.
Wow.
So all this to say, I I definitely give, trust-based philanthropy personally as well. I
Hmm.
give to organizations that I don't know any of the metrics around. But for Sharely, for my startup, my organization, I felt that it was important for us to be able to provide some metrics back
Hmm.
to the people who are donating through our platform. um, A, to provide as much transparency as we can,
Sure.
and B, to encourage continued giving so
Hmm.
that it doesn't kind of feel like the money is just kind of going out into the ether, that they have some sense of what it's actually helping to achieve in a more of a concrete way.
Concrete way. No, that's fascinating. Again, the different philosophies. I have to like as my program management brain is like kicking in, going, okay, how do I go from sort of here's a mission statement, right, and then we go down, or vision, right, then we break it into a mission statement, then we break it into a series of objectives, then we
Yeah,
break those down into a series of programs, right, each one being measurable along the way. I
yeah,
mean, I remember the work we did together,
yeah.
and I know you think the same way. So this must have been a natural progression into this, right? I guess what was the motivation to shift, right? Because you were at Goldman for a bunch of years, correct?
Yeah, I was there for over 11 years.
Wow.
Um, I actually, that thing, if you can see, there's a little like clear block, like a
Okay.
paperweight thing. I don't know if you could see
Nah,
it.
I don't think it's in the field of view here. Yeah, but
That's my 10-year
woohoo.
anniversary paperweight thing that I always assumed I would not get, because I was trying to leave to go to the nonprofit sector. Um,
Oh, interesting.
I always assumed I would try out the big corporate world, um, for a few years and just
Okay.
see what it was all about, and then go off and do my nonprofit stuff.
Your passion was is this, right?
Yeah,
Did you go to
exactly.
Goldman out of school or you did something before that?
So out of school, I tried every possible way to join a nonprofit, uh, and I just never heard back. So over
Oh
the
no.
course of 14 years, I have a spreadsheet of the hundreds of nonprofits, foundations, social impact organizations that I applied to. It was my tracker, so that I
Sure.
could see who I heard back from. But I literally never heard back from one, over the course of 14 years. So it was
That's
it was noteworthy. It was remarkable.
that's yeah, my word that popped in my head was insane.
Yeah.
Here you are, a very capable person, like willing to, do this thing that's incredibly impactful and needful, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't even call her back."
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
unbelievable.
I I mean, looking back, I have my own story, and the piecing the breadcrumbs together. I view it as the universe just had these guardrails on me,
Oh,
and
interesting.
and no matter how hard I pushed against them, it just what
Like, no,
that wasn't my path
it's not
to
time. It's not the right
to
path.
join. Yeah, to
Interesting.
join an existing nonprofit. I was meant to create something new. And of course, I had to go to Goldman to learn about the finance world in order to come up with this new thing, which is Shirley that's sitting at the intersection of capital markets and nonprofit. So, but I will say just one thing about Goldman. I stayed for 11 plus years
Mm,
because it was fantastic. As much as I didn't feel like that was my true calling.
mm.
It was the people were incredible.
I remember very well. Yeah,
you know,
it was it's such a different, people throw the word culture around very loosely, right?
yeah,
And it's like, I worked for a hedge fund for a while and I worked at Goldman
hmm
for a while, and
hmm
both experiences could not have been more different in the sense
yeah,
of the hedge fund was very much every step of the way you would look into, um, is the project staffed correctly? Do we have the right leadership? Do we have the right, is the investment still, has the risk outweighed the investment? Like, are we going to lose
mm,
on the, and it didn't matter. It wasn't, I didn't work on any of the investment side, right? It was literally the projects, do this data project, to do this, this security thing, whatnot. And, the philosophy was constantly, all right, let's reevaluate, right? At Goldman, it was the diametrical opposite. It was essentially, we're going to go do this thing, and we're all going to we're going to take this hill, to use a military analogy, right? And no, come hell or high water, we're taking this hill, and we're going to do this thing, and it sometimes you would cut people, sometimes you would add people would work crazy hours, but we took that hill, and it was like, I remember we were doing the integrated reporting across all the platforms. It was a
yeah,
beast. It was a beast of it was great though. Like, I learned a ton, again, expanding my technical skills as well as my financial ones, right? But like, the culture was very camaraderie, very work together. We're in this together. It was, I can imagine that I think, and I should have looked before we started the call. I think maybe it was a year or 18 months I was on the project, and it was great.
mhm.
But it was a lot.
That's a lot. Actually, one of my favorite stories about you, you might end up
Uh-oh.
editing this out, was
I
that
doubt it.
it was just so much information coming at us from all angles all the
Yeah.
time. And we learned something crazy new about one of the teams we were working with, and you were like, "Oh, I just forgot how to tie my shoe." Like, it was like something fell out because there was too much coming.
Yeah, that sounds like something I would say for sure. Yes, no, that yeah, okay. I may not be. You're gonna have to help me home because I don't know how to get there. I distinctly remember one of the things. This was before video chats, which frankly has saved my bacon in terms of like just being able to. I'm a visual person, so like,
Yeah,
we would get on these calls, and there were 10 or 15 people. It was all on phones. So you had to have this audio skill of recognizing, oh, that's Soraya's voice, that's Bill's voice, that's
that's
Mary's
right.
voice, right? And I'm like, wait, who said that? I'm writing out, like, I'm trying to keep notes of this stuff. Like, now these calls are recorded, they're transcribed. The AI just said, oh, someone said this, someone said that. It's so much easier. But I'm
Yes.
glad I sort of developed that skill, because I don't think I ever got good at it. I would always be like, okay, Soraya, like, let's go back over the action items, because I'm out. Yes. I forgot about that. Those were interesting challenges. Yeah, that's incredible. But so I'm a big believer in the universe, and I do believe that the universe sets us on a track. So you amass these experiences, you learned these things you needed to learn, and this, it's interesting because it seems like your notion to get into the nonprofit space has been with you for a long time.
Hmm.
What was that sort of, okay, I'm going to make the shift now, right? Because
Hmm.
I'm sure there were times that had happened, you're like thinking about it, but then I'm not ready yet, thinking about it, not ready. What was the actual, okay, I'm ready now?
Hmm. So I would I would say that roar inside of me, like the fire, the need,
Hmm,
just got too great for me to keep pushing it down.
interesting. The
Um,
voice, the voice inside,
the
the voice
voice.
inside our heads. We're like, hopefully it's a calm one. Nothing nefarious about that voice, right?
That's Yeah, that's it. It was
It's time.
it's time. And I felt like I had this realization, and I had this, like, I had messages coming from different mentors, guides, but they were kind of saying the same thing,
Mm,
which was you've been you've been pushing so hard in one direction. Like, you've been applying to nonprofits while you're working at Goldman Sachs. Um, and it's just not, it's not happening.
mm,
And you have a really good thing going on. And the message was acceptance. And when I finally found peace and kind of stopped trying to push in this direction that I thought was the right direction, other things, ideas, just kind of it fell into place. And that was when I started thinking about this concept of using the power of the capital
mm.
markets to help drive the type of change that I was interested in being a part of. So,
You couldn't say no anymore.
yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of calculus that goes into those equations. At some point, it's like, okay, do I have enough money saved? Got my financial
Hmm.
security for my spouse and my kids, right? That's
Yes.
always a factor when you're, either the sole or the, paired breadwinner, right? But
Yeah.
then at some point, you can't deny
Hmm.
the drive. So
Yeah.
help us understand how it works, right? So I understand the giving side, right? Like, so now you
Hmm.
decided to spin up the company, and
Hmm.
how does someone like how do the investments happen? What's the flow of capital? How do things work?
Okay. Yes.
Let's just get right into it.
Right. Um, okay. So Shirley is providing an add-on essentially for traditional brokerage accounts. So we are looking to partner with the investment firms, the brokerage platforms, the digital investment apps, um, any any company that provides investing services essentially. And we allow the investor to set some preferences.
Hmm.
So as they realize profits in their account, whether it's realized gains or as their assets appreciate, they can choose number one, an impact theme or a cause area that they
Okay.
want to support. So some of the examples are global health, education, economic opportunity, climate. They can choose whether they want the impact to be local in their community,
Hmm.
supporting organizations in their town, US, national, or international. And then they can choose how much and when they want to set their giving kind of cadence.
Oh, I
So
see. Okay.
it can be totally automated
Hmm.
on a monthly basis. They can say, I want to donate 1% of my realized gains. So that means any cash coming into the account, either from dividends, interest income, or stock sale
Hmm.
profits.
Corporate
And
action.
then it can be set it and forget it.
Hmm.
Um, or they can say, I want a stock donation option,
Oh,
and I want
interesting.
you to send me, you, Shirley,
Yeah.
to send me favorable opportunities to donate stock so that it will be both high tax advantage for the tax deductions and also high impact based on just the value of the stock. And then um, we can reference the impact theme that they've chosen. Again,
Hmm.
let's say global health, and we can say, hey, this stock has appreciated 80% since you bought it. If you donate one share, this would be your potential tax savings and your potential social impact in the global
Hmm.
health space, and actually detail out the representative, lives improved in XYZ ways. Do you want to proceed? So they click
Interesting.
yes, and then we process the stock donation in the background and then provide, in both cases, we process the donation, it gets distributed to the underlying vetted nonprofits in that impact theme. And then we provide impact reports
Hmm.
with both quantitative and qualitative data information. on the organizations and programs they've supported. And then we provide tax receipts and a consolidated year-end summary for
That's amazing.
tax deduction.
And this is from, this is just, and you took an idea and this is like just an incredible match. Like I'd have to go back and look into some of my brokerage accounts because I understand the notion of donating
Mhm.
stock as an example, right?
Mhm.
And making like charitable donations either through that, but not the direct connection. Like I love the idea of, hey, I had a profitable quarter,
Mhm.
or year or whatever, and then just make it happen just automatically. And like you said, set it and forget it. I love that. I think that's
Yeah.
terrific. Yeah. And so then on the other side, my brain again, the other side of
Yes.
the trade, so to speak, right? So you're signing up these, what's the sign up process? Like, how do they find you? How do you find them? Like, what's the process for the pair, right? Cause like, okay, I'm in, like, you got to find the
Mhm.
brokerage, like my brokerage or my app or
Yeah.
whatnot. That's the one side. How does
Yeah.
the other side work?
If the brokerage firm wants to control, the user experience, keep the data in house, which is more often than not what they're comfortable doing, and from a risk perspective makes sense. So there's that onboarding of the brokerage, and then this becomes a new product that they can promote to their clients and to their prospects. And a big part of our value proposition is that there are the younger generations, next gen, millennials, Gen Z, inheriting a lot of money. 68 trillion is the stat for millennials, um, and they're interested in doing good things in the world. Not that other generations are not, but there's just
No, I
the
feel targeted. I definitely feel targeted. I do. I feel like you're talking to me right now.
yes,
I hear you.
I know you want to do good in the world. You do good in the
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for that.
world. But yeah, there are many studies around how just the behavior and the purchasing habits and the decisions
Oh,
that
absolutely.
these generations make are more tied to these purpose driven factors. And so Shirley is able to give the brokerage firms a new tool to connect with and attract and retain these younger investors.
I think that's a like from a marketing perspective,
Hmm.
that's a draw for someone
Hmm.
who's for not someone, but an organization that's looking to appeal to a younger demographic, different demographic. Well, all right, I
Yeah.
can say younger,
Hmm.
but this notion of being impact driven is something I've read a lot about in terms of like demographics. It's much more
Hmm.
the why I'm buying the thing is less important than the thing itself. Sometimes,
Yeah.
right? I'm supporting a cause. I'm supporting an organization, or that's you know. I think that's a nice and healthy shift from just the lowest price. you know that's
Right.
nice. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could use a little more of that, and the numbers are staggering. I know there's a constant reluctance to do anything about the wealth, the inheritance tax, and to sort of
Mhm.
redistribute. And I understand the arguments. It's a long-standing economic social argument about tax. I earn this money, I want to give it to my kid,
Mhm.
versus you're dead, you should give it back to society. And so there's two sides. There's probably n sides of the argument. Those are the two poles,
Yeah.
and it's an interesting thing. I would imagine you've got a number of organizations you're working with.
Mhm.
Probably can't talk about any of them by name because you're working with them. So I would fully understand that. On the other side, right, where like let's say I'm interested in impact investing, for the environment.
Mhm.
How do you go about finding like that population? Is that I'm hoping your hit rate is better than when you're looking to volunteer with them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is
I'm
better.
just, I'm not the jerk that I just came off. Like I promise, I'm only kidding.
Of course. Um, yeah, so we are going through the impact evaluation experts.
Okay,
So instead of Shirley going directly and trying to
you find them. Yeah.
identify these beneficiary nonprofits, we're partnering with um, the the evaluators whose special specialty is looking into nonprofits and their programs and the effectiveness and the
Interesting.
overall health of the organization and the breadth and the depth of their impact and how well they are executing on their
Sure.
theory of change, things like that. So we are partnering with those types of impact evaluators, and then um, they go out and do the work of identifying our beneficiary nonprofits in each impact theme and each geography.
That's nice that you've got that bridge group,
Yeah.
right? Because as a
Hmm.
small organization, to do that
Yeah.
diligence, to do those connections, to find that population, to vet them essentially, and find and then
Hmm.
vet, to have that as
Exactly.
is that's that. I'm sure they're not doing it for you, just for you. Like, is the intention of that population that like that's a service that's been out like I guess let me ask it a different way. That who do they serve? Like, what is their
Hmm.
function outside of Sharely?
Yeah. So it's kind of different for different organizations,
Mm,
but I can speak about the Life You Can Save, which was our initial
mm.
partner, and they are still our partner. So their entire reason for existing is to increase donations to these high impact nonprofits that they have
Okay,
identified and that they publicly recommend.
got it.
So their KPIs are all based on money moved through their organization to the nonprofits. And so Shirley is hopefully helping to increase those numbers and increase the volume of donations going to these organizations.
I
And
see.
they're also um, maybe I don't know how to say whether it's primary or secondary, but baked into that is education,
Mm,
public education about how you can give to various nonprofits, and depending on the data that they're able to provide, your dollar may go much further in
sure,
certain organizations versus others.
sure. Like most companies I've worked for have had a matching program, right?
Hmm.
You can,
Yeah.
they'll, the more generous ones will have like you've got X amount of giving dollars that you have for
Hmm.
the year, and it's on us, right? And then there
Hmm.
beyond that, there's like a matching, right?
Yeah.
So plugging into that network, that's actually interesting because even when I'm making my own donation, like I'll use that portal now because I know if it qualifies, I'll get a match. And if it's a
Yeah.
small organization, I would say, look, let me make the company aware of them because if they've got a good mission, generally it becomes
Hmm.
an easy integration to get them onto that list, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Especially the local ones. But I love this idea that you've got this sort of intermediary that can say, hey,
Hmm.
we vetted them. Because
Yeah.
frankly, you'll get requests for people and it's like they sound legit, and then my first question is how much of the actual dollar that I'm giving goes
Hmm.
to the charity and how much of it is administrative overhead, because the stories are it's unfortunate, the negative views that I can tell you on my own behalf of like I've been constructed because you're thinking you're donating to a good organization. It's like, nope,
Hmm.
just kidding. So then you go like, all right, I know this one's good, I know this one's good, I know this one's good, and then that's it. And that's not good either, right? Because yes, they're important, but I believe in the diversification of the investment would have a broader
Yeah.
reach. That's my own view.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
I'll actually I'll add one more point onto
Please.
the overhead, the administrative overhead topic. What I like about this effective giving, effective altruism analysis and approach is that it goes beyond looking at how much money is going
Mm,
to the programs versus the admin, and it looks at the effectiveness of those dollars, because there might be very justifiably a need to pay experts in a certain area
sure.
a high salary so you can get the best people to actually run these programs, as long as you can show that their output is magnifying the impact. So Yeah.
Spoken like somebody who's worked in the capital markets before, right? I'm willing to make a good investment if it's going to have a high return.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying, basically. And I totally agree with you. I do think,
Yeah.
right, if you look at it just in absolute terms, right,
Yeah.
that doesn't paint the full picture, right?
Yeah.
But that's very sound logic. It's
Mhm.
investment logic, right? No, I appreciate that. That's a really good point that I often forget. It's like, what is the outcome? That's why I like the language of we're measuring outcomes, we're measuring the impact, we're measuring, the end
Mhm.
result. And it's unfortunate. I think your work is even more important now, given how our national funding has been, impacted by a
Mhm.
lot of the changes in the federal government.
Yeah.
I try really hard not to step on that landmine because it fires me up. But like,
Yeah.
I feel very strongly like, as the richest country in the world, we have an obligation to
Yeah.
help those in need.
Yeah.
I also believe, though, in the capital market and markets in general, and the fact that your approach can I don't want to say fill a gap, but add to add to
Mhm.
the solutions here. So I think that's doing great work, and I think that's very, very exciting.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
and it must be scary, right? I mean, so
Yeah.
your funding model, are you funded? Like, how does Sharely work in terms of its own structure? I know we talked a little bit about earlier about and I forgot it already. It's not a C corp. I know that part.
Oh, yes, the Public Benefit
Public
Corporation.
benefit. That's it. Yes.
Yes. So I explored all the different legal entities that we could become, starting with a 501(c)(3 nonprofit.
Hmm.
And my main question was, why not? Why should Sharely not be a nonprofit itself? And there were a few things that came out of that.
Hmm.
Um, One was we wouldn't be able to accept equity investment. So we wouldn't be able
Oh,
to get investors to help back us and help
I
us
see.
get off the ground and build the technology and hire people and grow.
Hmm.
So we would be reliant on grants,
I see.
um, or individual
Yeah, individual
donations.
donations or federal,
Yeah.
grants from
Hmm.
state and local government or federal government. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I did apply for a handful of grants, and didn't get them. So it
Hmm.
was kind of like, okay.
Plan B.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So plan B was to launch an impact focused startup for
Hmm.
profit. Um, and so we're incorporated in Delaware, as
Okay.
many startups do. And we have a public benefit corporation designation, which you just taught me before this call or this interview that
That's
OpenAI now has. Um, so, or they're going for.
or going for, yeah.
Yeah.
That was. I think their mission's different. I'll just leave it there, right? But I think the intention was to be able to provide an exit strategy for investors, and
Mm-hmm.
as a strictly not for profit, that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work, right? So they're spinning up
Mm-hmm.
this other entity, and I just read about it recently, and I'm like, okay, that's the angle, because
Yeah.
the whole battle between the lord, the emperor, the empire, the whatever they are, the Silicon Valley elite that are
Mm-hmm.
making decisions for a lot of things in terms of like corporate structure. There's a lot of money tied to OpenAI. There's been a massive amount of investment, and then this contingency option, something that's I didn't know it existed until recently. So, but it
Mm-hmm.
does make sense. Like, so in order for, if I was to say, look, let's donate X% of these shares at, as if I get like a split or dividends or whatnot that are paid in shares, I can actually donate that, and I couldn't do that without the structure. So that makes a ton of sense. Not to mention
Mm-hmm.
your own individual, like if you wanted your own individual investments for Sharely proper, like I think
Mm-hmm.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you did some good old fashioned research, figured out what made sense, right?
Good old
Awesome.
fashioned. Yes. Didn't have AI to do that research for me when I
Uh, you
started
know,
Shirley.
yeah, yeah. I tell you, it's incredible how much the open-ended questions can yield just interesting answers if you ask them in a way that, like I like to ask the open-ended question on an interview when I'm hiring someone or I'm, looking for someone to fill a role, like, because then you see where their thinking is. Never
Yeah.
thought it would get so interesting with machines to ask the open-ended question and get like, that was really insightful. And like, wait a minute, is insightful the right way to put that? Like, it's a machine. Like,
I know.
how do
I
I, like, I'm getting into like, jumbling myself up with words. Yeah, it's wild.
No, I usually ignore it when it tries to be conversational with me, it being any of the AI chat bots. Um, it's very transactional. Like I'm just trying to get information from
Gotta
it.
think. It's like search, right? I just ask for it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but recently I was like, okay, I'll just answer because it asked something like, "How are you feeling today?" Uh, and I answered, and we had a little
Little
conversation.
chat.
But yeah, but then it brought it back to what I was originally asking about. It was
That's
something
so crazy.
health related, so that's
Yeah.
why I asked how I was
Yeah. Are
feeling.
you feeling okay? You're asking a lot of health related questions. How is your health? Like, are you feeling okay, Soraya?
It's so
That
crazy.
is, yeah, no, it is. I find myself, I guess I'm a courteous person. Didn't
Mm.
realize so like, I'll literally say like, thank you. That was a good answer. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what is like, okay, listen, I
I
figure at some point they're going to be running the world anyway. So if they remember I'm polite now, like, all right, we're not going to kill him. He was polite, so that's a positive, I think.
still remember. Yeah, I do use please still in like almost all my prompts,
It's
which
just such a great, like, it's just, it demonstrates, you're a courteous, polite person. Yeah. Yeah. It's a strange world we're in right now. We're in this weird transition space. And, so tell me about your structuring the board and like, you've got,
we do have a lot of advisors.
okay.
So they are people that helped me at the very early stages figure out how to do this,
Hmm.
how to be a startup founder, how to launch this company and turn an idea into something. Um, and I couldn't have done any of this without them because they were my team members. I didn't
Sure.
have anyone else. It was just me
And
starting
how did you find them? Like, what was these are people you knew, these are people you found, like, what's the story there? That's got to be fascinating.
it. It is. So all of my early advisors were just through the startup grapevine.
Okay.
Um, and it was just a bunch of talking to people about my vision and the
Hmm.
problems I was having, and them saying, "Oh, you should talk to this person," and them saying, "You should
Ah,
talk to this person." Just a lot of networking and endless amounts of calls that many times felt like weren't leading to anything tangible, but they
sure.
did eventually.
Well, that's that
um,
universe for you again, right? Just throwing
as
stuff
a
your way. They're like nothing, no opportunities ever, you may not
yes,
know it now, but it'll show up later. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then I just started. You click with certain people, and
Hmm.
they immediately get it. They get your vision and the mission, and then they bring their expertise in a certain area that helps push you forward. And so all of them started pro bono.
Hmm.
Bless them. It was just, they wanted to help me turn this into a real thing. And they had the experience and expertise in doing so. And then some, it was a year or two in
Hmm.
that we turned it into something more official,
Hmm.
and,
Like a
had a
structure.
contract with some terms. Yeah. Um, and my newest advisor actually is going to come on in a greater role soon.
Hmm.
He's a former Goldman colleague,
Hey, that's
so
exciting. That
which is amazing. Yeah, it's so cool because we worked together for many years.
hmm.
He's a senior engineer. He was a senior engineer there at the time, and then went on to be a CTO for other fintech startups. So he's just got all of the expertise that we need.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
so that was pretty
That's so great because like and so much of that expertise, particularly around finance, is like you need to know this, but the security APIs, the integration. Like there's so much standardization in the space that
yeah,
without that knowledge, just to start yourself up from scratch is hard, right?
yeah.
And so finding someone that's fantastic. Congratulations. I'll
Yeah.
ask you later who that person is.
Thank you. Yeah. And then
Oh, that's awesome.
he brought in someone who's yeah, another foundational member. And so it's just yeah, it's a lot of
That's
through the
great. No,
networks. Yeah.
that's fantastic. And that's if I think if there's a theme throughout this entire, like almost every episode of the podcast, the two themes that come out again and again and again, and one is the preparation for whatever it
Mhm.
is you're looking to do, whether it's the interview or the big meeting, blah blah blah, all that preparation,
Yeah.
preparation, preparation. Second,
Yeah.
and not those are not priority order, is networking.
Yeah.
And if you're not networking, at every age, you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice. That
Hmm.
was a big part of my idea for this. It was very much this, this notion of, wait a minute, I've got a lot of friends that I've been, that I've had these good relationships, and I don't necessarily have to talk to Soraya every week, right? But we're like, hey, how are things? Catch up, and that's been, as I'm sure I've mentioned at least once, it's been a wonderful side effect. Even if we can't connect to do the podcast for whatever reasons, it's been great reconnecting with folks. So that's been amazing, and that's great. Do you get together with the old crew occasionally? Is it? I know we did for a while, and then it kind of faded. But like, is that you still see the old gang, so to speak?
Yes. Yeah. I
Awesome.
think it's been too long at this point. I've moved away from New York, so
Oh, I didn't know
when
that. Where are you?
I am in Florida.
That's incredible. Okay, nice.
I know. It was actually a totally accidental move during COVID. We
Oh
came for a
wow,
3-day weekend to visit my parents. We got stuck during lockdown and we lived with my parents for 10 months,
wow.
co raised our son with my parents, and we just kept staying in Florida year after year. It's
That's
very
great.
different from New York City.
Yeah, just the hair different. Yeah, that's
It's
terrific. I did not realize. Yeah, that's yeah. The weather's different. The noise
yes,
level, the traffic.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very very
it's
different experience.
peaceful. It's a peaceful life. We're in Fort Myers,
Okay,
which is a yeah, it's a
that's awesome.
calm area.
Different, yeah,
Uh,
different vibe. Yeah,
Yeah. But I love to go back to the city. I miss it. And when I do go back, meet up with some of the old
yes,
crew.
I would love that. I'd love to
Yeah.
get together at some point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just some general tips in your experience, whether it's recent or in the past. Um,
Hmm.
you know, a, one of the goals of the work is really to help people, improve their experience in terms of like, finding the right job or passing interviews and things like that. I'd love to, like, some of the more fun ones, I guess, would be like, what was your worst interview experience? Um, I can share some of mine, but why don't you go first?
Oh, I want to hear yours. All right, I'll go first and then you get to go.
Sure.
Um, so I generally prepare a lot
Hmm.
for things, um, professional things, I will say. And
Oh, nice, nice
yeah,
insight there.
that's
Thank you for
funny. If
sharing.
my husband heard that, he would be like, I don't know.
When are we going
I,
to see that at home?
he's the family planner.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, with interviews, with work, definitely, I tried to just go above and beyond so I cover my bases and feel prepared. But somehow during college, I had an internship interview that I went to completely unprepared. I
Oh
think I
boy.
was just overwhelmed with schoolwork and showed up just really not knowing much
Hmm.
about the company. Um, and yeah, so I completely bombed the interview and felt really stupid. But the manager who was interviewing me was so kind,
Oh,
and
that's great.
he took it as a teaching opportunity and gave me tips on how to how to not do that ever again. And I just that's always stuck with me. I really
That's great.
appreciated that.
What were
Yeah,
some of those tips? Like, be prepared.
learn about the
Learn
company
about
ahead
the
of
company.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, know what you want to learn about the company
Mm,
also. So know enough, but then also come with questions. I mean, these are very
they're
basic
basic, but
interview
it's
tips. Yeah.
it's still a common mistake.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a common mistake. The
Yeah.
interview experience coming over to Goldman was not a positive one,
Oh,
honestly.
no.
I forget who I talked with exactly, but I spoke with a couple of the directors and managing directors at the time, and it didn't go well. I don't know. I couldn't put my finger on exactly like
Hmm.
what went wrong. And the funny thing is, I'm trying to remember the partner's name. I think it was Matt. He pushed me back onto them. Like it was one of these deals where the partner was like, "Look, you're making a mistake. He's a good guy. He can do the
Hmm.
work, for
Wow.
whatever reason." And I was like, "You did what
Nice.
now? Like, okay, like now I have to do well, damn it!" Like,
Yeah.
and it worked out. It was really funny. I think it was something like, "Give him a shot for 2 weeks. If it doesn't work, we won't charge you." I was like, "Well, that makes me feel very valuable." But it worked out. It was a great experience. And I think, I wish I could look back in time and it's like, what did I do to not
Mm.
succeed? Right. Because
Yeah.
that could have been a teachable moment as well. Frankly, I think with me, it might've been a lack of preparation. It might've been not
Mm.
knowing enough about, if I remember correctly, the industry was changing to a counterparty clearinghouse, right? Where
Okay.
there's a separate entities that were doing the clearing. And I didn't know enough about the
Okay.
change, the from and the to, and I could have done a better job preparing.
Mm.
Frankly, I think if I was to pin anything on myself, I'd probably say that was it. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that was a learning experience.
Oh, it's
And
hard to imagine you having a bad
ah,
interview.
thank you. I'm not going to let you go. You guys are so good for my ego. I appreciate that. But like when
Yeah.
you're interviewing someone, whether it's like, what do you look for? Like what is that thing or things that you're looking for in the candidate that gets you, that you really value?
Um, I I now with the startup
Hmm.
especially,
Yeah.
I really appreciate when people come with ideas
Hmm.
and proposals and like they teach me something
Love that.
during the interview, whether it's just a creative way of approaching something or they just they have taken the initiative to not only learn about the company, um, but to put their own, you know, thoughts around it to come up with something new to talk about. And
Interesting.
I really appreciate that. And that's something in hiring that I also that's a shift in my mindset around just hiring and the candidates that we're looking for. It
Hmm.
used to, especially in a large organization, and I wasn't responsible for hiring much at Goldman, but in the when I was involved in the process, I was looking for someone who could do the job and, meet the criteria, the
Sure.
requirements. But now, again, especially because I'm just learning on the job, um, I'm looking for people who have more expertise than I do,
Hmm.
who are just um, smarter, more well versed, whatever it is in the area that I'm hiring for, because they need to help us elevate our game and get to the next level and teach me how to do that.
See that first of all, I think that's great, and I can't agree with you more. But I don't
Mhm.
know that should ever be unique to your situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I would love to hire my replacement.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
in all seriousness, I think the person who can bring in and cultivate the talent that can do then I could go off and do the same thing somewhere else or something
Mhm.
different. Like
Mhm.
I've not, I think there's a fundamental, that there should be a shift in that the way you're thinking about it, in my opinion. If there's a right way, right,
Mhm.
that's the right idea, because this way they can help learn and grow and bring things to the table. That's I've said this in probably every podcast as well. That's why diversity in your hires are
Mhm.
so important. Like, I
Yeah.
know it's not a great word right now, but I don't care. Like the notion of having different perspectives from background, from
Mhm.
race, gender, education, like all of those bits, then are just crucial, because you're going to look. At least I know I look at the world a certain way, and when somebody comes in with this idea, and I was like, I can't. I never would have come up with that myself. And that's,
Yeah.
it may not be like, it could be a great idea. It could be a terrible idea, but like what it
Mhm.
often will do is that idea starts, coming out. And if you start, if you're in a brainstorming mode, it's the benefit's huge. Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Um, is there a, let's see, is there a particular change that you've seen in terms of like over the years of like managing your team? Have you, when we were together, we were both ICs, right? And over time, now you've shifted into a role where you're leading, and you're going from, like, I don't remember your full trajectory at Goldman. Like, were you running teams at some point, or
No, no.
continuously? Yeah,
It was more program management. So,
got it.
um, working with people that I did not directly manage,
Yeah.
but trying to get everything done.
Well, but that, like, so and they're getting everything done, right? Because they don't report to you. You have
Yeah.
probably zero impact on their bonus, right? So, like, that's leading through influence, though. Like the notion of basically getting them to do something sometimes that they don't want to do. Like,
Yeah.
what's a particular effective strategy for you?
Mm,
From getting them to do something that you need them to do that they may not prioritize as their first thing.
yes. Um, so this, I would say, one of my strengths, and also at the same time, it's a weakness, is that I care a lot about people's feelings, um,
Not a week.
and and I I always approach every interaction like thinking, how am I coming across? How
Hmm.
might I be making them feel? And so sometimes I'm just not like, I'm not, what's the word, heavy handed enough.
Oh.
But I do find that I can gain rapport with people because I actually care about them and
Hmm.
their well being. And over time, that helps the relationship because they don't view me as someone who is just like chasing after them
Sure.
for to get things done. It's more of a personal relationship. So
I support you fully. I don't think there's anything wrong with using the carrot instead of the
mm,
stick.
yeah,
I mean, the stick shouldn't come out as often as some people think it should, frankly. I mean,
yeah,
granted, I think it's very different in escalation versus the stick. Right. It's like,
yeah.
and you can do that in a compassionate way. Say, look, sir, I have needed you to do this by Friday. You've said,
Hmm.
this is the third Friday. You've said you get it done. It's not done.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
letting you know now. I have to let your manager know that we're not going to hit our deadlines because of your inability to blah, blah, blah. Right. And there's nice ways of
Hmm.
saying that. And I've
Yeah,
always believed that if you can do that in a kind and a, transparent way,
yeah.
then either the person will step up and do the thing, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Or you're not blindsiding them. You told them you're gonna escalate. And that was one of the things that was one of the positive things I got out of that working for the hedge fund was this notion that escalations are not bad. It's not necessarily like you're doing, as long as you're communicating, you're transparent about it, you know.
right.
And that's hard because people don't want to talk to you. I don't want to go to your manager. I don't want to do that. It's not something I want to do and need to do, et
Mhm.
cetera. So yeah,
Yeah,
but you got to get past that level of discomfort.
yeah.
One of the other discomforting bits is giving people feedback, right? And sometimes
Mm.
feedback is, this can be as an IC or as a manager or as the CEO of a not for profit. Well, damn, I forgot what it is. B Corp. B Corp.
Public benefit
Benefit
corporation.
corp.
It doesn't roll off the tongue.
BBB. It
Yeah.
does not roll off the benefit corporation, public benefit corporation. So, what's your strategy for giving feedback? I'm curious.
Um, so this kind of tags on to what you were saying about being clear about the process or the expectations, the results that we're looking to see, so that somebody is not surprised
Yeah.
if negative or constructive feedback is coming their way, because I try to make the expectations clearly understood and mutually agreed to.
Yeah.
Um, and in a startup, that's very hard. Even Goldman, it felt sometimes very hard.
Well, you're
Just
trying to
so
predict the
many
future.
moving pieces. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're trying to predict and like there's so many moving pieces, and especially when like I don't know, at Goldman or other like every company in my experience has done things somewhat differently. Like you'll have a quarterly review, you'll have a semi-annual review, sometimes it's just an annual. A
Hmm.
lot of things can change when you wrote down your expectations to where you
Yeah.
landed, right? So
Yeah.
it's a moving
Exactly.
target, but I think please go ahead. I interrupted.
No, no, yeah, exactly. It's tough even when you have the structure.
Yeah,
So just trying to be clear and transparent along the way so that when they if they start kind of missing certain
mm,
expectations or KPIs, that it feels like it's kind of obvious
mm.
to both of us.
It's
And
not a
then
surprise.
if it's not obvious, then it's just being straightforward
Yeah,
and kind. Um, and I the fail fast um, methodology, I guess, of startups applies in personnel as well,
oh, I can't
because
agree more.
we don't have the time or the money to put into people who are not really accelerating our growth.
Yeah,
So yeah, just recognizing these things early on, hoping that you're not doing something unfair, or
sure.
that you might look back on and regret, but still trying to act efficiently.
Yeah, and like I said, and with compassion. Oh, I agree. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be a different perspective when you're dealing with your investors, your funding, where your money's coming from.
Mhm.
It's not like you've got the deep well of a corporation.
Yeah.
You got to be very careful with your spending, and you got to make sure every one of your investments that you're making
Mhm.
for the business for the organization, pays off. That's great.
Yeah.
No, thank you for
Absolutely.
sharing that. I will ask you my closing my common closing question. I really appreciate your time. What advice would you give to your younger self? Jump into a time capsule, can go backwards. What would your
Mm,
advice be to
my younger self,
your younger self?
stop applying to nonprofits. Uh, no, I had to go through that. That was that was
Like you
part of the
said,
journey.
this was the path. Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes.
No, I would say that it's okay to not feel like you have your plan figured
Mm.
out. It's okay to not have an answer to that interview question of where do you see yourself in 10 years? Even
Is
though
that even a thing?
you
Like,
have to like, I know, I don't know if it's okay to answer it with my answer that I'm giving you, um, but things will fall into place, especially when you just follow what interests you
mm,
and what feels good. I mean, that's
mm,
very fluffy, but um, even while I was in the corporate world and doing financial services technology projects, I was spending all my free time learning about the nonprofit space
yeah,
because that's what really intrigued me and felt good. And it led me here. So
that's
that's
great.
my advice, is it's okay to not know what you're doing.
Yeah, no, and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is not easy for people, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a one of these debates around like coaching, mentoring people, giving them advice.
Hmm.
You do need there's a degree of practicality you have in your
Hmm.
career, right? To think about like there's I've used this expression a lot. Like if you've got to make the decision to feed your family, like that, you
Hmm.
might not be working in your
Hmm.
dream job, but then like you said, like on you make the best of what it is you're doing. You make you optimize what you're trying to optimize for, whether it's money or whether it's time or whether it's your investment, your side investments in terms of your projects and whatnot, and eventually it'll fall into place. I believe that, but I think people make a lot of choices just for passion, like to take on, you know, $500,000 in debt to be, to go
Hmm.
into film school, and that's you're betting everything on this. You better have the evidence behind you that you can actually be the next Spielberg, right? Or
Hmm.
whatnot. That might be harsh, but I do think there's a degree of practicality that you have to weigh in there.
Yep.
But that's not to say you should not follow your passion, it just may not be your passion, your first order activity. It might not be the thing that's feeding the family. It might, like you did,
Exactly.
right? Put it
Hmm.
on the side until it's time. And then you can
Yeah,
execute with full conviction. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that matter. And it may or may not align, but
completely agree. Yes.
yeah, I worry about, when I was, again, this is the advantage of being the gray hair. Like when I was the generation, when I was applying for school loans, first of all, the numbers were, a lot smaller, like my entire college was less than a year. Is that right? Oh, good Lord. Yeah, there were less than a year at my daughter's college at Northeastern,
Oh my
right? And
goodness.
4 years
Yeah.
of 4 years of school, private college too, right? So
Hmm.
my parents were, we got a lot of aid, and it
Hmm.
was free money, so to speak. There were loans, but the
Hmm.
lion's share of it was because my father was a New York City cop, and we were below
Oh
the line
wow.
of yeah, that was a
Very cool.
yeah, and he was a hustler. He worked for the mill. He did weekends with the army and fixed cars. Like he
Wow.
was, yeah, 4 kids. It's not the lifestyle is not an easy one, but he put us all through school. My
Hmm.
mom obviously did a lot. She did a lot as well, not just taking care of us, but we were a hustling family from way back when, you know. But like when I look at like my interest rate was a federal loan, it was 2%, I think, right?
Hmm.
And now it's market rates. Like this
Yeah.
is insane. Kids walk out of school with this massive number, right? And
Hmm.
then it's at market rates, and they start accruing interest in freshman year. Like everything we accrued was deferred. Like I, I,
Wow.
I remain appalled at how hard it is. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just, like,
It's not a
yeah,
good
there's a
situation.
reckoning in that space that's coming, and I appreciate
Hmm.
what people try to do to make it better. But like, there's now the economics have just changed. You can't just follow your passion. You need to follow.
Yes.
You need to, otherwise you'll be miserable. Like, but there needs
Yeah.
to be that balance. You need to figure out what that balance is. So,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
well, thank you. Is there anything that my one listener can do to help Shirley?
You have more than one listen.
I do. No, I do. We're in the 20s now, I think. So I'm very excited. Yes,
There you
and
go.
that's only the people who follow. Like it's been nice going to like little events. Like my son played his band. They played at a venue in the city, and a lot of them had come up to me, like his peers, and said, "Oh, we really like the podcast." Oh, I'm like, I hope you're subscribing, man. I hope you're like, like
Yes.
it's
Yes.
just nice to hear. It's great. So they like it.
You're hustling too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 It's a thing. So, seriously though, is there something people can help Shirley? I love your mission. I would like to help you personally. As we were talking, there are some friends I could connect you with that are way smarter than I am that can actually help you. But like,
Oh.
are there things that that handful of listeners could do or contribute in any way that you'd like to let them know?
Well, thank you for asking that. Um, if any of the investment platforms that anyone is using come to mind,
Cool.
and you think that either you know someone there or just want to suggest a potential option for us to look into, that would be amazing.
Awesome.
And we are also, Sharely itself is fundraising. So we're
Okay.
raising our pre-seed investor funding round. So
Awesome.
if there are any angel investors out there who want
You
to
hear
get involved
that?
with
I
our
know
mission,
you know who you are.
we would
Awesome.
love to hear from you. But thank you so much, Tom. This was fun.
This was fun, right? Like it's great. It's nice to be able to pick up a conversation after a few years and just be like just jump right back in. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time today. I know it's incredibly valuable, and
Likewise.
we appreciate
Thank you.
you.
Yeah.